Can you please help me with my anxiety? It's taken the best of me. My exam is less than 3 weeks. I'm very stressed and anxious. Right. Okay. So let's talk about confidence. Confidence is determined by your perceived competence, right? If you are confident, then your anxiety levels are going to be quite low, right? I'm sure we'd all agree with that. So really, I think an alternative way of phrasing that question would be, what's the best way for me to prepare myself for this exam so that I enter the exam as confident as possible? So that's really what you want, right? You don't want a delusional confidence. You want a confidence that you can back up. And so what builds confidence? Reference experiences. So you need to have evidence that you are capable of doing something. That's what makes you confident, and that's what lowers your anxiety, right? So how do we go about achieving that? Well, reference experiences. You build reference experiences where you successfully conquer something, and once you've done that a number of times, you'll be confident. Anxiety will lower over time. So what am I getting at? Well, unfortunately, it's practice. It's mock exams, it's practice partners, under time conditions, replicating the environment, the exam environment as much as possible. The more you do that, the more you desensitize yourself to that environment, the more you adapt and develop habits to deal with that environment, the lower your anxiety levels will be, the higher confidence levels will be, and the better your performance will be. A little bit of anxiety is, normal and expected, and probably if you don't have any anxiety, it's probably bad, because you want to be on your tiptoes a little bit, not too relaxed. But yeah, I think the majority of people, sitting this exam, their main issue isn't necessarily that they're too relaxed. It's for most people, most people, it's that they're too anxious. And so I think, planning your preparation period or your revision period in such a way that best serves you, so that you approach that exam station outside the cubicle feeling confident. And because you're all, you're not the kind of people who have delusional confidence. If you're confident, you wouldn't have got to this stage in your career if, you didn't have the substance to back it up, So because of the stage you're at, I can fairly, with quite a lot of certainty, say that if you approach that cubicle with confidence, you'll probably end up doing well, because you've got those reference experiences to back it up. So so the only way really is to keep practicing under time conditions from the beginning, so that you develop good time management habits, which is really, really important, because a consultation that you'll conduct with no kind of time constraints is going to be completely different to a consultation that you're going to conduct with time constraints, right? So it's really important you do that from the beginning. I can't emphasize, timing yourself enough. Yeah, and I think, provided you do that on a consistent basis, it doesn't have to be like these long stretches of practice. In a way, I think, short periods of consistent, regular practice over long periods of time is much better than kind of like the whole cramming approach, where you dedicate a whole month to preparing for the exam and you're like working 8-hour days practicing. A longer term kind of more consistent approach, I think, is going to be much more effective, because it gives you time, your brain time, to kind of reinforce those neural pathways. You need time for that. Yeah, I mean, is there any doctor who asked the question about the anxiety, was there anything in particular that was worrying you at all about, the exam, entering the exam, anything that's making you feel anxious at all? See if we can, give you a more kind of individualized, specific answer. Because for some people, there might be different aspects of the exam that's, that's worrying them. Okay, so you've said What if I don't know the diagnosis, or what if the patient doesn't open up? Okay, so for a lot of stations, it's a mistake to, by the time you say, if you've got a simple kind of medical consultation and patient's presented with a symptom, and you've taken history and you've verbalized your examinations that you want to do, you've been given some findings, and then you are at the stage where you want to discuss the provisional diagnosis, right? So it's at this stage, it is just a provisional diagnosis. You're not expected to, nor should you, diagnose a patient based on history and examination for the majority of cases. So there's no harm in being, transparent and explaining that, for example, you suspect. So suspect is always a good word to use, a good habit to get into, to always say suspect, that it might be this. You might also, so if you've got kind of a strong suspicion it's something, you might want to just talk about that. But you can also give a list of differentials as well. A good instance where I think it's appropriate to give a list of differentials would be when you suspect cancer. If you suspect ovarian cancer, you want to include kind of something benign there as well, just to cover you in case it is something benign. So we talk about that in the teaching scenarios. When you're teaching suspected cancer approach, I think it's important, to keep your options open, because it is an early stage. You've not done a biopsy yet, so you haven't confirmed the diagnosis. So it's just a suspicion at the moment. So there's no harm in not being sure. It may be that the scenario that they've given you and the information they've given you, you shouldn't know what the diagnosis is at this stage. But they're just trying to see or to gauge how you're thinking. So that was the diagnosis thing. So you've got a few options. So you always, it's always a suspicion. Before you've done any investigations, it's always a suspicion. So you might not necessarily know what the diagnosis is. And you can always give a list of differentials, and I wouldn't be embarrassed about that. Always be transparent about what's going through your mind. What you shouldn't do is, which a trap that you can make you fail the station because you'll be considered as an unsafe doctor is, you might have, read a recall on the internet, on WhatsApp, someone's posted a recall of a specific scenario. And so you think, oh, it probably sounds like it could be this one, but you don't actually, within the consultation, you didn't gather enough information to get to even suspect that kind of diagnosis. And so that would, and they're aware that candidates are, reading recalls and stuff. They're well aware of that. So, and that's by the way why they do throw in small variations within scenarios to try and catch out the restricted candidates. So beware of that trap, because you will be penalised and probably would be considered an unsafe doctor if you give a diagnosis without gathering the information that you need to get to it. That makes sense? Okay. What if I don't? Okay. What if the patient doesn't open up? Well, a lot of the patients won't open up. So you should have a strategy prepared. So for a lot of the, some of the domestic violence cases.